Thank you.
Right upstairs? Oh, okay, you're not with the group? Nope. Nope, alright, well, you're just right up here then, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right up that way.
Yeah.
Very
I missed that on the way through.
Yeah, that's alright, no worries.
Hello, welcome aboard. Careful.
I'll take this down and you can come a little further forward if you'd like.
Thank you so much. Yep.
The original shipping with the tow logs in a pioneer setting. She was used for 20 years on the Muskoka lakes, and she became the forerunner of all the other steamships that operated on these lakes for 92 years or site of the prisoner of war camp set up in Gravenhurst in 1940 to house captured German officers and certain POW camp has what all POW camps: watchtowers, barbed wire fences. At the Gravenhurst camp, the barbed wire fence extended out into the lake. That was to allow the German prisoners to go swimming in the summertime if they wanted to. Many of them did. The POW camp was, it housed about 500 prisoners and a sent back to Germany. Today the property is a public park, known as German Park. And you'll notice there's a tiny beach over there to the right as well. The beach is part of the park. But the buffaloes are gradually... Ladies and gentlemen, if you are still watching on the right or starboard side of the ship now, you'll notice we're passing another lovely little island over there on the right. Family were the first white people to settle on the shores of this bay. For a ride as early as 1800 was in existence. And that one time the family owned all the islands on the bay. It's believed that the parents named them after their children. And just now, ladies and gentlemen, on the left northwest point on the mainland shore, Gravenhurst Point juts about half a mile out into the bay. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching still on the right or starboard side of the ship, you'll notice that nice looking property with green lawns and concrete buildings among the trees. That property, if you didn't know it, is the former Ontario Fire College. The Fire College was established here at Gravenhurst in 1958 to train municipal fire. The staffs used to start fires at those buildings, and then they would say to the trainees, "All right, there's your fire, put it out." They say that practice makes perfect, folks. I'm sorry to say that the Ontario Fire College was shut down 3 years ago by the Ford government at Queen's Park as another of their wise and very progressive measures. And over there on the left, or port side of the ship now, we're going past Parker's Point, as I mentioned earlier. First summer resort ever owned in Gravenhurst. The resort was called the Daisy Island Cottage Resort, and it was founded back in 1889 by Thomas Robinson, the English sailor who pioneered on this bay. Mr. Robinson built his resort just above where you can see the modern cottage, and hidden among the trees on Daisy Island. Now, when Tom Robinson established the Daisy Island Resort in 1889, most people around here thought he was crazy. Because you see, back in the 1880s, Gravenhurst was not a tourist town. It was a lumber town. And typically, this whole bay would be jam-packed with 1 million feet of saw logs on any summer day, heading to the sawmills at Gravenhurst. The idea of trying to run a tourist resort in the middle of a lumber town seemed a little bit odd. But Mr. Robinson persevered with it, and in fact the Daisy Island Resort was quite successful. It lasted right up until the 1940s and became the forerunner of many other quiet resorts in this area. Somebody had to launch the new trend. And ladies and gentlemen, just now on the right or starboard side of the ship, we're passing the north end of Mary Island where the flagpole is. This might interest some of you, I don't know. About 8 or 9 years ago, Mary Island was put up for sale along with the 2 cottages on it for the price of $8 million. Now I suppose that was a reasonable price, but to me it seems a little bit ironic, especially when you consider that back in the 19th century, you could have purchased an island on the Muskoka Lakes for $1. Came up to Muskoka in the 1860s and 70s did not come here for fun or recreation. They came up here hoping to earn this country, believe it or not, or failing that, to work for the lumber companies. And to the early settlers, the islands on these lakes were absolutely useless. I mean, as far as they were concerned, you couldn't pasture animals on them, so what good were they? But that attitude began to change in the 1880s when American sportsmen began to discover this area. The sportsmen wanted places for campfires and cottages, and suddenly the islands became valuable. Times changed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still watching on the right or starboard side of the ship, you'll notice that big buff-colored brick building among the trees over there with a gazebo on the point. The big brick building, if you didn't know it, is the former Gravenhurst Sanatorium or Tuberculosis Hospital. The hospital was first established here in 1897. It was the first TB hospital opened anywhere in Canada. At one time, there were 3 sanatoria on the shores of this bay, but in 1934 they were all merged into one. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we go past the old sanatorium building like this, I'm sometimes reminded about a very famous patient there. I'm thinking of the late Dr. Norman Bethune of Gravenhurst. Dr. Bethune later on went on to become a hero in China because of his services with the Chinese Revolutionary Army in the war against Japan. But in the 1920s, Dr. Bethune contracted tuberculosis, so he was admitted to the hospital. Say about Dr. Bethune that he was never a man to do anything by measures. Dr. Bethune was not satisfied with the treatment he was getting at the sanatorium. So, if you can believe this, he actually operated on his own lungs in the hospital using surgical instruments that he himself had perfected and which are still in regular use today. The operation was successful, and he went on to accomplish great things. Small boats cannot see us coming from this direction, folks. When you see the Narrows, I think you'll agree that the channel is very well named. It is only about 80 feet across. This ship is 29 feet in beam, so it takes very careful navigation to get a ship this size through the Narrows channel safely. But I could remark that steamships have been going through this channel ever since 1866. Some of them were a lot larger than the WENONAH, but they always managed to get through safely. The Narrows, by the way, is the only channel that links Muskoka Bay, where we are in waters of Lake Muskoka, so we have no choice but to go through it if we want to continue our cruise. And there now, the Narrows is opening up. Oh look! Over there at the mainland shore there to the left by the water's edge, there's a great big moose.
Moose.
Isn't he magnificent? Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we're now entering the Gravenhurst Narrows. If you'd like to get a real sense of just how narrow this channel actually is, I would respectfully suggest that you look on both sides of the ship as we go through. Then you'll see what I mean about narrowness. Here we go. Well, one more safe transit through the Gravenhurst Narrows, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up now on the left or port side of the ship is Lighthouse Island. The white lighthouse you can see at this end of the island is the only government lighthouse on Lake Muskoka. The lighthouse was first built here in 1905. The one you see there now is a replica 10 years ago by the Canadian Coast Guard. The original one was getting rather rough and shaky and had to be replaced. Now, folks, I might remark that the Coast Guard wanted just to put up a pole with a red light on it, but there was a loud outcry about that. The Narrows Lighthouse has been a faithful sentinel for a long, long time now, so they were good about it. They gave us a replica of the original lighthouse. The new lighthouse looks just like the original except for the windows on the side. That lake can be seen for a distance of 5 miles or more on Lake Muskoka, and it's a very valuable aid to navigation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the scenery has changed dramatically. We've just left Muskoka Bay and now we're out of, they're not all the same. And just to keep you oriented, ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising in the northerly direction right now along the west side of Lake Muskoka to the left, where you can see all those lovely summer cottages. The small island coming alongside on the left or port side is known as Second Island. First Island is the island where the lighthouse is.
Cottages.
So, ladies and gentlemen, since we are out of the open waters in Lake Muskoka, it behooves me to say a few words about the local geography, just in case some of you are not too familiar with this area. If that is the case, I'd like to remark that Lake Muskoka is the largest lake in the Muskoka district. It is about 18 miles in length, or 30 kilometers, and about 8 miles. Now, folks, we also go to navigate what Lake Muskoka is. In order to get from Gravenhurst to Lake Russell or Lake Joe bright and early in the morning, and we don't get back until sundown. So in other words, it's an all-day trip. And we find that most of our passengers nowadays simply do not go on all-day cruise. So we have to trip ourselves to the lakes, as they say. But I'm glad to say that every so often we get to a charter on the upper bays, usually from one of the main resort hotels up there. Muskoka. Now, according to Mr. Dwyer's book, there is a police inspector by the name of Ian Murdoch who is taking a summer holiday at the cottage on that little island. And then, one morning, the inspector discovers a dead body floating in the lake near the island. Naturally, he gets in on the case. It happens during an evening dinner cruise. It's very dark. All the passengers are down below in the dining room having a good dinner, or they're up in the bar lounge having a good time. And the forward break deck of the ship is dark and deserted. And there, the murderer stalks his prey, throttles him, and throws the body into the lake. As the story unwinds, the inspector uncovers a second murder east of Bracebridge, and finally the book ends in a dramatic shootout right in the harbor of the town of Gravenhurst. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I very much enjoyed reading Murder in Muskoka. It's an excellent detective story, but I want to reassure you that in real life, we have never lost a passenger on either of our ships. I might also mention that I was really surprised that Mr. Dwyer was 80 years of age when he wrote his book, He had never written anything before in his life, but the book became a runaway bestseller. It may still be available in paperback if you look for it. So I guess the moral of the story must be this: never write off life at the age of 80. I mean, how many people get to be famous at that age? Just now we're passing the Twin Rocks on the right or starboard side of the ship, folks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still watching the scenery, you'll notice that we're cruising on a very pretty channel here between the mainland shore on the left or the long, narrow island coming up on the right or starboard side of the ship. This channel is known locally as Shady Narrows. They call it that because there's a local access road from Highway 169 that serves a lot of the cottages on the mainland shore. The access road is called Shady Lane, and by extension, we call the whole channel Shady Lane. By the way, folks, if you're still watching on the mainland shore there to the left, you may be wondering about that enormous stone wall that you can see by the water's edge. Believe it or not, that place is not a resort hotel. It's just a modest summer cottage built back in 1982 for a quote-unquote multi-millionaire. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we're actually entering the Gravenhurst, rather the Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching on the mainland shore there to the left now, you'll notice there's quite a cottage community over there. Although, just between you and me, I have a feeling that most of those places would be painted bright orange, and it was once used as a chinchilla ranch. That may explain why people report seeing large numbers of very silky squirrels running around these parts. Folks, this may surprise you, but even that tiny island coming up on the left or port side of us has a name. It's called Przemysl Island. Przemysl Island was named after a city in eastern Poland. In Polish, I gather they pronounce it Shemish. But Przemysl was the scene of a battle between the German and Russian armies during the First World War. And here where that motorboat is passing on the Taylor Island shore, you can see a cove over there with a radio transmission tower aligned with it. That cove used to be the site of a resort hotel. It was called Glen Echo Lodge. Glen Echo Lodge was established on Taylor Island back in 1900. It originally catered to lumbermen, but in the 1920s it was adapted for summer holidayers, visitors. I remember Glen Echo myself as a wooden three-story building painted green with a red roof and white trim for a holiday in the Muskoka backwoods. I also like to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that back in the 1950s, me about that place, and I would try to answer their questions as best I could. Well, folks, it wasn't very long before I got a very irate letter from the owner of that property. He told me in no uncertain terms he did not want his property discussed by the cruise ship as it went by every day. Thank you very much. But then, get this, his letter then proceeded to give me 4 pages of gratuitous information all about the place. Now figure that one out.
Yeah.
They're still watching on the right or starboard side of the ship. You can see that there's a nasty little shoal coming right up in the middle of the channel where you would least expect it. The shoal is marked by a Greek buoy and a central harbor. The local people call it place that shoal is very bad news for boaters. But I'm very glad to be able to say that the Muskoka lakes today are very well charted. It is seldom that anybody ever spots a rock or a shoal in the lake that nobody noticed earlier. But back in the 19th century, there were no charts, and most of the rocks on these lakes were discovered by the boatmen the hard way, by piling up on them. However, it was customary back in the olden days that if a steamboat captain spotted a rock or a shoal that nobody had noticed before, he would usually report it, and then they would add it to the charts. Go through the gap between Rankin Island, still on our right or starboard side, and Taylor Island coming up on the left or port side. This gap is known locally as the Wiger Gap. It was named after a family by the name of Windsor who settled here. We're not sure about that. The Wiger Gap is a very busy boating channel in the summer times. All the cottagers on the outlying islands use it regularly to get to and from Campbell's Landing. Your cruise among the islands on the west side of Lake Muskoka. Over there to the right or starboard side we're passing Hayden, rather Beach Grove Island to the left and Hayden Island to the right. Between now in the main portion of Lake Muskoka, The shoreline that you can now see on the left or port side of the ship looks like the
One hot, oh, 4 hot dogs.
after a place in Scotland. During the war, I'm not sure during the war, and their droppings are toxic, which is why the trees on the island are very unhealthy. But once cormorants get established, then any locality is rather hard to get rid of. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually entering the Gravenhurst Narrows now, as you can see. And now we're actually coming into the Narrows, part of the Narrows. If anybody's wondering, this is a natural channel. It has never been blasted out or dredged or dynamited or anything like that. The Narrows is about 14 feet in depth. The WENONAH 2 draws 6 feet of water, so that gives us 8 feet of clearance as we go through here. Certainly plenty of boating traffic in the Narrows, ladies and gentlemen, but we should expect it on a day like this. Now, as you can see, we're back on Muskoka Bay for the last lap of our cruise. About 3 miles ahead of us, or, if you prefer, 4 kilometers. Just past Bear Bay now on the right or starboard side of the ship. That's an arm of Muskoka Bay, ladies and gentlemen, just now, once again, we are passing Cliff Bay, this time on the left or port side of the ship. As we're passing Shady Narrows, as we were heading up the bay from Gravenhurst at the start of our cruise, I mentioned that raising the logs meant stirring up a lot of water sediment off the bottom of the bay, and that's so that the cottagers around here are all stirred up as well, with good reason. The cottagers raised objections at the salvage operation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we've just passed Gravenhurst Point and Percy Island once again. And that means we're only about a mile or so away from our wharf at Gravenhurst. But perhaps I could point out one or two more interesting things to see on the bay before we get back to dock. For example, that shoreline on the right, or starboard side of the ship, is the shore of West Gravenhurst. And at one time, that entire shore was filled with sawmills. Around 120 years ago, there were 10 or 11 mills drawn all along that shore. each with huge stockpiles of lumber or shingles which were exported down the throttle of Buffalo every year by rail. At one time, half the people of Gravenhurst were employed by the lumber companies, and they used to call the town the Sawdust City. You may be aware that we have a brewery in Gravenhurst nowadays called the Sawdust City Brewery. The last sawmill in Gravenhurst shut down in 1930. That cove used to be the site of old Muskoka Wharf. Muskoka Wharf is the railway station down here in the harbor of the town of Gravenhurst. The station was built by the Northern Railway of Canada in 1875. For 78 seasons following, trains from Toronto Union Station used to come straight to Muskoka Wharf every summer day to connect with the steamships on these lakes. That was the way people traveled back in those days, and in the 19th century there were no automobiles or motorboats and the roads were terrible. So anybody coming up to Muskoka in those days would take the train.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome, guys.
Thanks.